day. It's JJ MMA. Today we are going to be breaking down the UFC 328 card that will be happening this weekend at the Prudential Center in New Jersey. And starting with the early prelims and ending with the highly anticipated main event. This is a sick card. So from bottom to top, this is a sick card, and this is easily the best card of the year so far. This is going to be like probably top 3 cards of the year when it's all said and done for this year. And starting off with the early prelims, we have Clayton Carpenter versus Jose Ochoa. And I'm going to pick Jose Ochoa for this one. And, I know I'm going to use MMA math here, and MMA math isn't always accurate. However, what these two guys have in common is one opponent, and that's Cody Durden. And if you look at how these guys both performed against Cody Durden, Jose Ochoa put on a striking masterclass against him, got him out of there 11 seconds into round 2. Very impressive performance from Jose Ochoa. And Clayton Carpenter, I believe he lost to Cody Durden. I believe that he did lose to Cody Durden. No, he beat... Wait, hold on. Let me check. Clayton Carpenter didn't fight Cody Durden. So what the hell am I talking about, guys? But, he did lose to Rafael Filo, who lost to Cody Durden. So that's what I'm talking about. So, Rafael Filo, he just lost to Cody Durden. And, he beat Clayton Carpenter. And I know styles make fights, but I believe that this stylistic matchup caters very well to Jose Ochoa. And, I think that this favors him a lot. And I think that he'll be able to put on a pretty good striking performance against Clayton Carpenter in this one. I think he'll get him out of there by knockout. And I think he'll do it in round 2. And I think he'll do it late into round 2, but I think that Jose Ochoa is going to get this one done by KO or TKO. And we move on to the next fight. Susurkaev versus Santos. And I think that this is a layup stylistic matchup here for Susurkaev. Susurkaev's very good. He's very good with the striking on the feet, slick in the striking. He's got some good submission game, even though he only has 1 submission finish in his career. He's undefeated, and there's a reason that this guy's a highly touted prospect. Not just because he trains with Chimaev, but because he is a very good middleweight. I don't think he's the best prospect that we have at middleweight. We have guys coming up like Yusri Belgarui and Atiba Gautier, who we'll get to later in this prediction video. But Susurkaev, he's a good prospect at middleweight. He's pretty good pound for pound, pretty slick. Santos, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know much about this guy. I just know that he did win his last fight. I think he's lost a fight in the UFC before. And he lost to Ozzy Diaz. And Ozzy Diaz, I know Ozzy Diaz is a power puncher, but, he took Ozzy Diaz to decision. And, that's not a very good look, losing to Ozzy Diaz, so already I don't like that. And I think that this is a layup matchup for Susurkaev. And, guys with the build, I know I'm going off like build and prototype here, which I usually don't do. But guys that with the build and the prototype of Santos usually get chinned, and they are very chinny. So, I don't know. I'm going off what I see here visually because I don't know much about this guy. And I see the loss to Ozzy Diaz, and I'm like, this guy should run through Santos, and I think he will. I think that this is going to be a round 1 TKO stoppage. I believe Susurkaev is going to pour it on him early. Maybe he wobbles him with something, and then he starts the finishing sequence, drops him again, finds the finish. I think he'll do it in round 1. And 2 finishes, both by knockouts to start out the card. I think that's what's going to happen. Susurkaev gets this one done in round 1. And we move on to the next fight of the early prelims. This is a sick fight outside. This is a very underrated fight on the card. This is a sick fight outside of the featherweight rankings, just right outside of there. Pat Sabatini versus William Gomis. And both these guys right outside the rankings. On Tapology, they're both ranked like number 20. So like very close to the number 15 spot they are in the rankings. And I know it's Tapology rankings, which aren't always that accurate. However, Pat Sabatini, he is on a 9-fight MMA winning streak. And the reason that I say MMA is because some of them were outside of the UFC. He's 35. William Gomis, he's rangy. So that's what scares me about this. Like, he's a counter puncher. William Gomis, he's got that fast twitch. He has a 4-inch height advantage, 3-inch reach advantage here. He's a lot lankier, and that scares me about this matchup for Pat Sabatini. However, Pat Sabatini is so good with the jiu-jitsu. He has 12 submissions in his career, and I think that he will be able to get down somebody like Gomis. I don't think he'll be in that much danger on the feet, considering Gomis doesn't have that much of a knockout threat. He usually goes to decisions. He doesn't have that much power in his hands, pound for pound. But yeah, I like this matchup for Sabatini. I think he wins it, and I think he wins this one by some. Do I think he submits him? I don't think he submits him. I mean, if he gets him to the ground and gets into an advantageous position, I think that he submits Gomis, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that there's going to be moments where Gomis is almost in a guillotine. Maybe he's almost in a rear naked choke. And I think he gets out of it. And I think Pat Sabatini won't quite get the position. But, I mean, I'm going to take a look at Pat Sabatini's last matchups to see who he submitted. And, yeah, I mean, in 2024, he submitted this Pierce dude. But, yeah, I mean, I think he gets this one done by submission. He wasn't able to submit Brito, and I know Brito's probably better in the jiu-jitsu than Gomis is. I'm going to take Sabatini by submission. I think Sabatini's going to get this one done by submission in round 3. I think he's going to get the position on Gomis to be able to submit him. And, yeah, I think he'll get it. Round 3 submission for Pat Sabatini. I'm going to go back. You know what? I'm going to go decision for Pat Sabatini. I don't think he'll get a submission. Pat Sabatini, I'd say 29-28, clear 29-28 decision win for Pat Sabatini. There might be some blobbing in this fight, but it's okay. We move on. Last fight of the early prelims, and this is another underrated banger, and this is Roman Kopylov versus Marco Tulio. I don't know why Marco Tulio's this big of a favorite in this fight. As I highlight the odds here, minus 190. I don't think he should be that much of a favorite. And that's because, like, I mean, who's like the guys he's beat in the UFC? I think Ihor Potieria and Tresean Gore. Those are Marco Tulio's UFC wins, and he lost his last fight to I'm forgetting who he lost his last fight to. He lost it to CLD, so that's not a bad loss, but he did get knocked out in that one. Yeah, he got finished pretty badly by Christian Leroy Duncan, who wasn't able to get Delidze out of there. And I know Delidze's awkward, hard guy to finish. Especially if you don't have that submission threat like Anthony Hernandez or that crazy pace that a guy like Anthony Hernandez is going to put on you. But yeah, I think Roman Kopylov's going to be really meticulous in this fight. I think he's going to Petr Yan max out there. I think he's going to rip the body kicks on Marco Tulio, and he's going to set up the big shots. I think he's going to set up his left hook, his overhand, and something like that will clip Marco Tulio on the chin. And I think that Roman Kopylov's going to starch Marco Tulio out cold. I think he'll get him out, maybe not out cold, but definitely a TKO win, definitely a finish for Roman Kopylov. I see that happening for sure. He gets himself right back to right outside the ranking spot, and these guys are the same exact height. And I know that last time we saw Kopylov fight, I was about to say it was he didn't fight Costa last time. He went to decision with RoboCop last time he fought. But yeah, obviously RoboCop's a lot bigger than him. I don't know how he didn't get knocked out in that fight. Yeah, I mean Roman Kopylov's a really tough guy to finish, and I don't think like a guy like Marco Tulio, who usually finishes most of his fights, I don't think that he'll get Kopylov out of there. And I don't see him getting past the range and the snap of Kopylov's body kicks. He's really good at those. Yeah, and I think that Kopylov's kickboxing and that his like middleweight blobby Walmart Petr Yan type style, I think is going to easily get the dub here over Marco Tulio. I got him getting a TKO late round 2, and yeah, that's my pick for that one. Roman Kopylov gets it done, round 2 TKO. We move on to Jim Miller versus Jared Gordon. This is an Unk versus Unk matchup, and we need more of these because we see these Unks versus prospects. These young whippersnappers, they need to learn their lesson because Jim Miller and Jared Gordon are coming out to show them what a real crafty vet performance looks like here. And, we need more of these Unk versus Unk matchups. And, Jim Miller versus Jared Gordon, it's a very, very crafty matchup, Back in their day, this was a war, and this is obvious. I'm obviously kidding because this is still a war now. And Jim Miller, he bleeds in his fights. He goes out there to fight. He goes out there to scrap. And I know he's 40 years old, but he's still got that dog in him. I think he's over 40. I think he's like 42. yeah, Jim Miller, he goes out there to scrap. He's still got that great ground game. I think in 2024, yeah, he has a recent win. In his last three fights, he's 1-2. So he does have a recent win, and that was by submission. And Jared Gordon, he's been submitted by who has he been submitted by? I know he's been submitted. I think he got submitted by Grant Dawson. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see. Yeah, he did get submitted by Grant Dawson. And I think that Jim Miller has a similar ground game even at his old unk age, his old crafty age. I think that Jim Miller has a really good submission game, and I think that if he's able to get Jared Gordon down, which I think he will, I think he'll be able to get to the hooks, not the hooks, the hips of Jared Gordon, or maybe a body lock, maybe he'll sweep the leg, something crafty. I think he'll get him down at least once, and I think that Jim Miller will be able to submit him maybe with an arm triangle. And I think that this reeks of a Jim Miller masterclass, and I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen early round two. Jim Miller gets the body lock, he gets the takedown, right into an arm triangle, something crafty. Jared Gordon taps, and I know Jared Gordon beat Paddy Pimblett. Well, he didn't. It didn't count for him, but he did beat Paddy. And Jared Gordon's just more. I think Jared Gordon's even more washed than Jim Miller, even though Jim Miller's fought on UFC 100, 200, and 300. Jared Gordon's probably more washed than Jim Miller, even though there's a there's a 4-year age difference between these unks here in the lightweight division. But yeah, I think Jim Miller gets this one done by submission. This is going to be his 22nd submission win. I think that's more than Charles Oliveira. So Jim Miller's been around for a very long time. It's great to see him still out here doing it. Hopefully he retires soon so he doesn't get really bad CT. I think he's already got it. It's okay. It's okay. As long as he keeps entertaining everyone and putting on these fights and earning his money, he can stick out there. We love Jim Miller, and we are all rooting for Jim Miller in this fight. I think he gets this one done by submission, unironically. And I know Jim Miller's kind of been easy to walk through for a lot of fighters, but Chase Hooper took him to decision. Chase Hooper wasn't able to finish him, and Chase Hooper has danger in the grappling, especially when he's confident in winning a fight. And he was confident in the fight against Jim Miller, and he wasn't able to submit him or finish him at all. So yeah, I think that Jim Miller gets this one done. Yeah, we move on to the next one. Grant Dawson versus Mateusz Rebecki, and this is going to be a scrap. This is going to be these two fights in a row right here. These two fights in a row right here. I think that the cage is going to be absolutely bloodied up after the prelims because of these two fights. We know Jim Miller likes to go out there and have wars. He's usually on the receiving end of the battering of the blood. And then, Mateusz Rebecki, every time he fights, it's an absolute war. And I think that this one's going to be no different. However, he is going to be on the losing end of this one again, sadly. And yeah, I think that Grant Dawson's going to win this one. And I think that in late rounds, after war, I think that Grant Dawson's going to get Mateusz Rebecki in an uncomfortable position. And I think that he'll submit him. I think that he will submit Mateusz Rebecki, who will be covered in his own blood, in a really bad position. And I think that Grant Dawson will get it done and submit him. Grant Dawson, he has really good grappling and really underrated grappling. And I know he's been finished in the first round in, I think, all the fights that he's lost, I think he's been finished in the first round. Let's check this again. Last fight against Manuel Torres, that one's kind of inevitable. Bobby Green finished him in the first round. Yeah, it doesn't matter past year, a lot of the rest of it don't really count that much. But anyways, I think regardless of how much of a war Mateusz Rebecki will make this fight out to be, I think that Grant Dawson's regardless going to get it done. And Grant Dawson, he's a solid lightweight outside of the rankings. Not a prospect, though, even though he's on the younger side. Guys like Manuel Torres, guys like Quillen Salkild, even in Esteban Ribovic, I think they all show Grant Dawson levels. However, I think that he's able to beat a guy like Mateusz Rebecki, who's a small flyweight. He's only got a 66-inch reach here. A lot of bantamweights got a longer reach than that. A lot of bantamweights are taller than 5'7". He's just a really small lightweight, and he's not Ilia Topuria. So he doesn't have much power, even though he's able to make these fights into brawls and cut guys open. I mean, he made a big well under Mike. Oh my gosh, Mikdebek Oralbai's eye. Um, Mikdebek Oralbai. Yeah, and I think Grand Dawson gets this one done by submission. He gets him in he gets Rebecki in an uncomfortable position late, and I think that he'll submit him with an arm triangle or smother him with something. Maybe get an arm bar, some position like that. I think Grand Dawson's going to submit Matusha Rebecki in round 3. That's my pick. And I thought this card was going to be a lot of decisions, and some fights were going to stink it up. But yeah, I got a lot of finishes on the prelims so far, and my only pick for a decision is Pat Sabatini by decision. So, anyways, we move on to the next one. Yaroslav Amosov versus Joel Alvarez. And this is a sick fight, and these guys are both very high level. Probably the best fight that you can make right now outside of the welterweight rankings. Both these guys very high level, very good welterweights. Joel Alvarez is a pretty big welterweight. He was at lightweight once, and he was a huge lightweight. 6'2", 77-inch reach. No idea how this guy made it down to 155. Sound like Joe Rogan there with Alex Pereira, but it's okay. I mean, Amosov, though, the only fight that Amosov lost, I think he had like COVID or something, or he was super sick. And, he went out there, still fought. But the rest of his fights, he's won. He's finished guys. I think he has 21 finishes, 12 by submission, 9 by knockout. And, he got the Magny test in his first fight in the UFC, and he was able to pass it and submit him in round 1, which I do think, regardless of how easy stylistically a matchup that Neil Magny can be for a lot of people in the UFC, especially at his old age, it's still impressive to get him out of there with a submission in round 1. So I think that Yaroslav Amosov is very good. Despite having one fight, he does deserve that number 14 ranking that he has been crowned by the UFC over Colby Covington, who recently got kicked out of the rankings. Joel Alvarez is still very good, though. Joel Alvarez has a lot of threat on the feet to a guy like Yaroslav Amosov. And Yaroslav Amosov is no slouch in the striking as well. However, Joel Alvarez does hold the major advantage, in my opinion, in the striking. But I don't think it'll stay up there. And Joel Alvarez is also no slouch on the ground as well. But I think that Amosov is on a little bit of a different level. This will be a very close fight, in my opinion, and probably a split decision, by the way. But I think this is going to be a very, very close 29-28 decision. They're going to give it to Amosov. This is going to be like the Khabib versus Glenson Tebow. Maybe I'm not trying to compare Joel Alvarez to Glenson Tebow here, but this is going to be like the Glenson Tebow versus Khabib type of fight in Amosov's career. Amosov still has a lot of time to make his way up the rankings and possibly be a championship level fighter. And I think that, if he gets past Alvarez here, he will be a championship level fighter. So with a few time and with a few fights. But yeah, I mean, Amosov's good. I think he gets this one done by decision. And yeah, we move on to the next one. The featured prelim, and come on, guys. I mean, I want to see Atiba Gautier go against somebody who can test him a little bit more than Pulaev. You know what I'm saying? We got Ozzy Diaz against the Atiba Gautier here. And Atiba Gautier, he's very good in my opinion. He's got decent grappling, super humble guy, great striking, great power. This guy's supposed to be the Ngannou of middleweight, and I'm kind of starting to buy the hype. But they just keep giving him cans to crush, and Ozzy Diaz is just another can to crush here for Atiba Gautier, and this is just an obvious. It's such an obvious prediction that I don't even want to spend time talking about it, but I guess I will. That's why I made this video. Atiba Gautier, he's got the one-punch power. I think that'll land on Ozzy Diaz and it'll wobble him. And then he gets Ozzy Diaz up against the cage, lands some uppercuts, starts teeing off on him, throwing the combos, start entering a flow state, and then he gets the finish right there. That's what's going to happen. And it's going to happen in round 1. If Atiba Gautier takes Ozzy Diaz to round 2, it'll be embarrassing for him. This is the guy that you have to get out of there in round 1, or else your stock spikes down. You know what I'm saying? So I think that Atiba Gautier will understand the assignment, and he will get this can that he was crushing. No offense to Ozzy Diaz. No offense to Ozzy Diaz, but Atiba Gautier is going to get this one done by an early TKO. knockout, whatever he does, just get Ozzy Diaz out of there, and then we can give you a ranked opponent finally. You know what I'm saying? I think that Atiba Gautier, he's spent enough time in the UFC where he either gets a test outside of the middleweight division. Maybe you give him Monster Abdul Malik, who poses a little more of a threat. Then you give him a guy like that, and then you project him into the rankings. Maybe you give him a guy like Cannonier. You know what I'm saying? A guy on his way out, still a crafty guy. I don't know if you even risk it for him against Cannonier, but we'll talk about matches to make for Atiba Gautier if he wins this one. And yeah, Atiba Gautier gets this one done by TKO, knockout, whatever it is, round 1. And yeah, we move on to the main card. Bobby Green versus Jeremy Stephens. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. Who the fuck is that guy? We got King Green versus who the fuck is that guy? And I think that King Green is just gonna put on an absolute masterclass here, and there's no doubt about it. Why is who the fuck is that guy? Why is he in the UFC? Why is Jeremy Stephens in the UFC? You know what I'm saying? Like he had a 4-year layoff from the UFC after 2021. He was on a big loss streak. Then he came back, fought Mason Jones, took him to decision, and now he's back again fighting King Green. And I think that Jeremy Stephens' last win in the UFC was 2018, and I think it was his knockout over Josh Emmett. You know, the big, mighty, powerful Josh Emmett with that big meaty hook that can put you to sleep. But anyways, I think that Bobby Green is gonna absolutely put on a masterclass against Jeremy Stephens. He's gonna make this one look like light work, vintage Bobby Green performance, like he put on against Daniel Zellhuber in his last fight. I think that Bobby Green's absolutely going to masterclass him. You know, he's going to be walking forward at that range. Damn, man, what's up, bro? And then he's going to pop his head back, you know what I'm saying? You know, all the head movement. And then he's going to pop that jab. You know, he's going to walk into shit that could put him out cold. But it's just going to barely skim his head. You know what I'm saying? And hopefully he doesn't get chinned by a gust of wind that blows past him from Jeremy Stephens' big meaty hooks. However, King Green gets this one done, and he's going to absolutely masterclass Jeremy Stephens. I think that he'll hurt him bad with one of his, pull counter, 2 down the middle, and then he's going to get Jeremy Stephens with it. He's going to be jelly-legged, and then King Green puts on the finishing sequence. I think he's going to start styling on Jeremy Stephens, and this is a guy that King Green's going to have an easy time entering the flow state against a guy like Jeremy Stephens. He should be more of a favorite here, to be honest, but King Green, he's going to get this one done. Knockout win for King Green. I think round 2. I think that Jeremy Stephens still has not a terrible chin on him. So I think that this one will last around 2. King Green gets a knockout. This is going to be fight of the night. I think they're going to be scrapping a little bit, but the big shots are going to be missing King Green, because if he does get hit with the big shot from Jeremy Stephens, he is going out cold, even though Jeremy Stephens is washed, because King Green because Bobby Green has a terrible chin. But yeah, that's what I think about this one. And we move on to the next fight of the main card. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this one because this is a sick matchup and this is a good fight in the welterweight division. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this one. Joaquin Buckley, he's rangier than he looks. He's short. He's actually shorter than 5'10" probably, but he does have a 76-inch reach. Not Joaquin Buckley, sorry, I just talked about him. Sean Brady, he's also probably shorter than 5'10", and he has a lesser reach, 4-inch reach disadvantage here. And Sean Brady, in his career, he's only been beaten twice, and that's both in the UFC, and he's both been TKO'd twice on the feet, and it's from Michael Morales. I'm not going to hold that against him. Michael Morales is damn near a light heavyweight. And Bilal Muhammad, which I am going to hold against you, because Bilal Muhammad, not like it was just a ground and pound thing, like on the ground, maybe Bilal Muhammad landed some elbows, some hammer fists. No, this was Bilal Muhammad absolutely piecing up Sean Brady on the feet. And I'm so dead ass about this. And that's what scares me about this one for Sean Brady. We love Sean Brady. He's not one of my favorite fighters, but he's definitely an enjoyable fighter for me to watch. And his personality's cool and stuff. He's got a nice clothing brand, Grit and Guillotines. I got a pair of shorts on the way. But I mean, Joaquin Buckley, he's really rangy. He's got the good striking. He's real flashy. and he's got really crafty, good striking. He's like a freestyle striker. You know what I'm saying? But Sean Brady has really, really good grappling. One of the best grapplers in the UFC. And, I think that he'll be able to get to the hips of Joaquin Buckley. I don't think Joaquin Buckley's going to land a knee up the middle on the way as Sean Brady's on the way in or something. I think that Sean Brady will be able to finesse his way in to a takedown to Joaquin Buckley's hips, just like Kamaru Usman did. I think that he'll be able to get Buckley down and he'll hold him there. And I don't think he'll submit Buckley, however. You know what I'm saying? And I know Usman doesn't have a submission threat, but if Usman don't finish you on the ground, if Usman don't, you know, move position on you, you know what? Never mind. I take that back. I just realized Usman doesn't really progress position on the ground that much. He kind of just takes you down and blobs you when he has you on the ground. But I think that obviously Sean Brady's got the really good jiu-jitsu, but it took him 4 rounds to submit Leon Edwards. And I know Leon Edwards might have some pretty decent jiu-jitsu defense, and maybe Joaquin Buckley doesn't. But, just to be safe right now, I don't want to say that Sean Brady's going to finish him. Just to be safe, because I do feel like this fight could go to decision. Sean Brady took Gilbert Burns to decision. Still won pretty dominantly, but, I do think that this fight kind of reeks of a decision. This is a sick fight on paper, but I think that this kind of fight reeks of a decision. This fight reeks of a decision. And I think that Sean Brady's going to get it done. I think he's going to blob Joaquin Buckley 30-27. And yeah, that's my prediction for this one. Sean Brady gets it done by decision. We move on to the next one. Alexander Volkov versus Waldo Cortes Acosta. This is another fight that does reek of a decision. And if it goes to decision, it heavily favors Alexander Volkov. Number one, because he has so much more experience. Number two, because he has the more optimal prototype. Whereas Waldo Cortes Acosta, he's a little more blobby. I know he's still athletic. He played not Major League Baseball. I don't know what type of baseball he played, but he did play some type of professional baseball. But he's more blobby, more likely to gas out. And we saw him in a 3-round fight against Sergey Pavlovich. Sergey Pavlovich was kind of just controlling him on the feet. And I think that Volkov's going to do the same. I think Volkov's going to use his range, his teeps, his knees, his clinch work, his big man's Muay Thai. And I think that eventually Volkov will get him on the ground. Volkov's very good, and he did win the second fight against Cyril Gane for sure. One of the worst robberies in UFC history. And I'm not the type of guy who just throws around the term robbery like that, because a robbery is genuinely like when you look at a fight and you're like, how did the judges get that wrong? Volkov versus Gane 2 was a fight where you're like, how did the judges get that wrong? Like Jones versus Reyes was a fight where you like 49-46 Jones. I mean, are we fucking serious? It was closer to a 48-47 or 49-46 Reyes. It was closer to that than it was 49-46 Jones. Like, what the fuck are we smoking, bro? Anyways, off of that tangent, Alexander Volkov, I think he'll be able to use his rangy weapons here. I think he'll be able to utilize the grappling well against Waldo Cortes. And yeah, Volkov, he gets it done. This is going to be a decision. He wins it by decision. I don't see him starching Waldo out cold on the feet or anything, or starting a finishing sequence. That's just not Alexander Volkov's style. I don't see him submitting Waldo Cortes Acosta on the ground either. We don't see many submissions nowadays from these heavyweights unless they're unranked, because the unranked heavyweights are the guys more likely to tap. The really high level guys like Aspinall, Aspinall will get you in a submission. Just because he's so explosive and he's able to get you on the ground. Like, he submitted Volkov with an arm lock, I believe. Yeah, he submitted Alexander Volkov with a straight arm lock. But, yeah, anyways, Volkov gets this one done by decision. We move on to the co-main event, Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira. And, I used to be such a fan of Joshua Van. But, after seeing him get on top of the cage and sell, and I know he just got life-changing money, and he just became a UFC champion, fulfilled his dreams. But, after he showed, no sympathy for Alessandro Pantoja after his injury, no sportsmanship, the way that he talks about himself on the media, saying, you should know how to fall. If you a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you should know how to fall. It's just like no sportsmanship, no class from Joshua Van. And I might be a little biased because Alessandro Pantoja is one of my favorite fighters. We met Alessandro Pantoja in person at UFC Miami. We are Alessandro Pantoja. We are getting the belt back. So I might be a little biased here, but I think Tatsuro Taira is going to absolutely block Joshua Van and submit him. That's what I think, and I think that he'll do it in round 3. Now, I've been hearing like rumors that Joshua Van has actually pretty decent jiu-jitsu defense. That's what I think is going to keep him alive in the first 2 rounds. I think he will get taken down pretty easily by Taira. Taira is a lot rangier, 5-inch reach advantage, 2-inch height advantage, 3-inch leg reach advantage right here, as I'll highlight. And yeah, Taira's gotten a lot better with the striking. Like his kicks are a lot quicker. He snaps his kicks a little more. He utilizes the body work, the leg kicks, and I think that he's going to be able to utilize his range well on the feet against Joshua Van, and that's going to set up his grappling, and he's going to be able to get to the hips on Joshua Van. I think round 1 is gonna. I think Tatsuro Taira is going to win on the feet in round 1, just because he's going to be able to utilize his kicks, and then he'll be able to get on the hips of Joshua Van late round 1, establish the grappling, establish that threat, and then round 2, it's going to be one-way traffic starting late round 2. I think he'll get a lot of good ground and pound once round 2 starts, and then round 3 is when he gets to the hips of Joshua Van, climbs onto the back, gets the hooks, and I think he'll get the rear naked choke submission. I can see it happening. Japan, you've got a champion, and I think that they'll go to Japan for a numbered event by the end of the year, and I think they'll do Taira versus Pantoja, and that is when we get the belt back. That is when me and Pantoja get our belt back. We are Alessandro Pantoja. We are getting the belt back, and yeah, it'll be the storybook that we all need. And Tatsuro Taira gets this one done. Taira's very good. I know he lost to Brandon Royval, who lost to Joshua Van, but those are 2 very different stylistic fights, and 2 very different stylistic matchups. And Joshua Van was still getting hurt on the feet by Brandon Royval. He did have some kind of more invisible damage on his face, with the swelling eye, with the busted lip. So I think that Tatsuro Taira gets this one done by submission. I think he does it in round 3. Taira has really good jiu-jitsu, but, Taira's a really easy stylistic matchup for a guy like Pantoja, who's got better striking, granite chin, so he's not going to get rocked by anything that Taira throws, and better grappling. You know what I'm saying? Even though Taira is bigger than Pantoja, Pantoja's going to get the belt back regardless, no matter who it's against. But yeah, Taira gets this one done, in my opinion, by submission round 3. We move on to the main event. Oh, brother. Oh my gosh. You guys know who I want to pick. But it's just not going to happen. I know the Rocky edits have been getting to me. But it's just not going to happen. Khamzat's going to absolutely blob him. And I think that there's, this is going to be an easier fight for Khamzat to finish than DDP. Because, I don't know. I feel like Khamzat also does have some decent BJJ defense. Sean Strickland, he has that ability to get up off the ground. It's gonna be easier for him to get up against Khamzat Chimaev than it was for DDP to get up against Khamzat Chimaev. And if you're using MMA math, well, technically it won't, but it's just different because there are different prototypes. DDP is a very big man, not necessarily in height, but in size. He's a lot heftier, a lot stronger, I'd say, than Strickland. That's why he was able to kind of just fall on Strickland and get takedowns a lot of the time, because of how strong he is. But Khamzat is just a different type of strength. He's a coordinated wrestler's type of strength. And, sadly, he's just going to be able to get him down, ragdoll him. I think probably submit him. I think that Khamzat's probably going to submit Sean Strickland. There's going to be a lot of submissions on this card. I've been picking a lot of submissions. But, yeah, I think Khamzat's going to be able to submit Strickland this fight, just because, Strickland and DDP, they're different fighters, obviously, much different styles. And I think that this is a stylistic matchup for Khamzat Chimaev where he does get the finish. And I know I did say that I picked DDP to win. Never mind. I was letting my emotions get to me on my picks, per usual. I picked Yuri to win. Look what happened. I picked JDM to win. Look what happened. But anyways, I was very close to picking Gilbert Burns against Mike Malott too, but I didn't. But I be letting my emotions get to me on these main event picks, and I'm not this time. I'm not gonna do it this time. There is a world where Sean Strickland's. Yeah, I hope there's a world where Sean Strickland. And I hope this world is our universe where Sean Strickland's just starting to walk down Hamzat in round 4. Hamzat's getting tired, and he's like, "Come on, you go fucker, let's go, you fucking Chechen whore." I mean, if that world comes true, and if that's our universe, hope has been restored in the world. Everything's gonna be good again. Dandelions are gonna be growing outside. The world is gonna be peaches and creamville. And I will be so happy if that happens. But it's not gonna happen, bro. It's just not gonna happen. Because it's just not. It's not gonna happen. Hamza, he's got great striking defense on the feet too. That's another thing. So Strickland, Strickland's a defensive boxer. He usually pieces apart the guys that are going to be aggressive and push forward with their striking. And when Hamzat's striking, he don't really push forward. He just he's real Soviet style. He's got his guard out here. He's gonna head fake and then head fake, level change, shoot a takedown. The leg kicks. He's got the teeps. He's pretty rangy with his striking. He's got good striking. But it's mostly just kicks. It's kicks, jabs. He's really like, I don't know how to say it. Like he's very light on the feet, and he just kind of bounces back and forth, uses that Soviet style. Head fakes. It's like a Soviet and like It's like a more disciplined Japanese style of boxing plus MMA striking. But anyways, he's got good striking defense, kind of like Islam Makhachev. And he's also very rangy with his kicks. He's got that, I know he's not Dagestani, obviously, but he's got that Dagestani type striking, like Islam Makhachev, like Umar Nurmagomedov, like Magomed Ankalaev, except he's not as good of a counterpuncher as Ank is. But, yeah, Hamzat's underrated on the feet, and I don't think that he'll have much of an issue with Strickland on the feet, just because Strickland's approach to a fight is very defensive, and he will piece apart the guy who's trying to push forward on him and be very aggressive on the feet with him, like Anthony Hernandez was, and then he'll get you in the clinch, try to he'll target your weak spots, like throw a knee to the body like he did against Anthony Hernandez and crumble him against the fence. And I mean, he'll pick you apart on the feet if you're going to push forward against him. And I do think that Strickland does have an advantage against Hamzat on the feet. However, it's not as big of a gap as some may think. And Hamzat's just going to be able to kind of head fake with his style of striking early. I don't think he's just going to shoot the takedown immediately like he did against DDP, like he did against Kevin Holland. I think that he's going to wait a little bit and, throw the head fakes. And then he's going to level change, get the takedown. And I think that he'll submit him, not in the first round. I think the first round he'll kind of be blobbing him. Strickland's going to survive the first round. And after that, he's going to think that the danger's done, but it's not, because I think that Hamzat gets him down after that. And he jumps on the back and submits him with a rear naked choke. No, he doesn't. Not a rear naked choke. I think that Strickland's going to be getting up kind of in the north-south position, and Hamzat's going to reach across his neck, grab the arm, and he's going to submit Strickland with a darce. And I think he'll choke him out cold, because I don't think he's going to let go of Strickland. Obviously this is a very heated matchup. We are reacting live to the press conference. We're going to do a press conference recap video. And yeah, we're going to be going live a lot this week because this is a big week in MMA. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure that we're going to get International Fight Week announced this week, maybe on the pay-per-view, maybe during the press conference, something like that. But we've got the press conference for 328. We've got the press conference for the White House on Friday, which we will probably be going live for. We'll definitely be doing a recap of it, along with which will be conjoined with an MMA news video. So that's going to be a conjoined video. But I mean, yeah. That's my pick for the main event. Yeah, I got Hamzat winning by round 2 submission. I think he's going to win with a darce choke. I think he's going to lock him up in the north-south position. I think he'll choke Strickland out cold. Yeah, and I hate to say it because, my heart says Strickland's going to pull off the Rocky performance. He's training with Pereira like Rocky was training with Apollo Creed. My heart is saying that, but it's just not going to happen. And it breaks my heart to make this prediction. And I hope I'm wrong. I've been wrong on these type of things. Like, I picked Ankalaev to beat Pereira the second time, and he didn't. So I hope this is another performance that, like Strickland's just going to go out there maybe with some aggression, and Khamzat's going to try to like counter shoot, like time a takedown or something, and it's just not going to work. And Strickland's just going to stuff him, get the underhooks, and then maybe throw an uppercut, and then it wobbles him, and then start teeing off on the fence. Yeah, come on, you fucking Chechen whore. And then he's just like fucking mixing up with all of his strikes, knee to the body, just going batshit crazy on the fence, and gets the TKO. That's my dream world, but it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. There's no way it happens. And then there's another dream world of mine, a fantasy that I've been dreaming about, where in round 4, Khamzat's getting tired and he's breathing heavy. He has a lip injury, so he can't really breathe that well out of one of his nostrils, which explains why he does gas out in some fights. And he was gassing out against DDP in the 5th. In that dream world where Strickland survives to round 4, and then Strickland, he has him on the feet, and then he's starting to, really set him apart on the feet. Maybe he throws that 1-1-2 that Drick has hit him with in the 5th round, and then he lands it, and then Khamzat, flies to the fence, and then Strickland starts walking him down, marching towards him, jabbing and teeping, and then he says, come on, you stupid fucking goat fucker, and then he just starts teeing off, yeah, I want it to happen so bad, but it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, and it's so sad to say, but it's just not going to happen, bro. But yeah, hopefully it does. I'll be holding out for some hope. You're gonna see me you're gonna see me praying on live, saying, "Come on, Strickland, get Khamzat out of here," because I want Khamzat out of here. He's such a boring champ at the moment, because he doesn't fight, and I know there's some promotional aspect to him, but he just doesn't fight enough, and he's gonna move up to light heavyweight because who's he gonna fight after Strickland? Amosov? He's not gonna fight Amosov because I think him and Amosov are boys or something. So I don't think it's gonna happen. Khamzat gets this one done by round 2 Darce choke. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. I will stream for the press conference for UFC 328. I will be reacting to this one live, and it's going to be a good one. And I know it's only Khamzat, Strickland, and Van Taira, and Van Taira. It's pretty much the whole press conference is pretty much going to be Khamzat and Sean Strickland pretty much shutting up Van and Taira. Taira don't even speak English. I thought they should have put Brady and Buckley on the press conference too, because they've kind of been going back and forth on Twitter. So anyways, like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later. Goodbye.